What's up everyone? Today we're going to talk about mineral waters, electrolyte waters, and tap water. And we're going to compare all three types of water to help you make better purchases for your health and your weight loss program. We'll go over data and research, and I'll explain to you how you can use water to best maximize your health and weight goals and also save some money. Alright guys, let's get started. So first, when we talk about electrolyte waters or mineral waters, we need to talk about what is an electrolyte and what is a mineral. I think everybody knows what minerals are, like calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. And in the case of mineral waters, those are the four main things we typically talk about. And actually, potassium not so much, but I'll get to it in the next section. But what are electrolytes? Electrolyte water sounds like such a great thing for your health, and it always sounds like the better option if you just listen to marketing. But the reality is, an electrolyte is the same exact thing as a mineral. They're one and the same. So electrolytes are calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, etc. They're minerals. It's the same exact thing. So when you say electrolyte water, you might as well say mineral water. But the real reason why an electrolyte water cannot be called a mineral water is because there are standards that define what constitutes a mineral water. And those standards are actually quite high. And although we've come to think as electrolyte water as the healthier option, potentially, it's actually not the case, and I'll show that in the next section. But right before we go there, I do want to touch on the regulation around mineral water, which actually says that the minerals in the water need to come from the same source that the water was extracted from. And also, there's requirements in terms of number of particles of minerals in the water. So now let's get into what is the mineral content of tap water, electrolyte water, mineral water. Because when it comes to comparing different types of water, that's really what it comes down to. What is the mineral content or electrolyte content of those waters? Because the other things that may matter are things like taste or safety, but when it comes to electrolyte water or mineral water, you're always going to have safety. And when it comes to tap water, you can have safety by just getting a filter. So I won't be touching on that. Again, I'll just focus on the mineral content of different waters for you to make the best decision in terms of what to buy on a daily basis. So first, let's talk about the mineral content of tap waters. And here I'll mention a study from the US where they looked at the mineral content of different waters in different cities of the United States. And I'll give you two drastically different examples that show two very different results. First, we'll start with tap water in New York City. A lot of people believe that bagels in New York City are better because of the water. Well, that may be true, I don't know. But what about their mineral content? And here I'll give you the mineral content as a percentage of the RDA, recommended daily amount, per liter of water. So in New York City, the tap water contains 2% of the RDA for calcium per liter of water. That's not negligible. It's not nothing. It's actually higher than I would have expected, but it's certainly not a great source of calcium. Then magnesium. The water in New York City contains 1% of the magnesium RDA per day. Here you're really talking about something that's very negligible. And then when it comes to sodium and potassium, there you're about at 0%. But for potassium, it's not surprising because potassium in general is not something that you would find in water. So to summarize, New York City water, 2% of the RDA for calcium, 1% of the RDA for magnesium. So relatively poor overall, but not zero. And if you live in New York City and you have a filter, it's not such a bad thing to drink tap water. You'll still get some minerals out of it. Now let's look at a different city in the United States, Indianapolis. Actually, the tap water in Indianapolis has a substantial amount of minerals. 1 liter of water in Indianapolis contains 8% of the RDA for calcium, 6.5% of the RDA for magnesium. Now those two are quite high. So a liter of water in Indianapolis is a really good source of calcium and magnesium. So if you live in that area, it's probably not a bad thing for you to use filtered water and to get tap water knowing that it's free. Now when it comes to sodium and potassium, the water there has negligible amounts of those, but like I said, you shouldn't be looking for water to get your potassium requirements. Now let's talk about mineral content of electrolyte water. Because after all, electrolyte water sounds like such a healthy option, it must have a really high level of electrolytes. Now let's look at it. And here, I'm not going to mention the name of the water that I picked, but it's a very famous type of electrolyte water on the market that a lot of people think about when they think about electrolyte water. And they usually rely on this when they go work out and they want to replenish their electrolytes. But again, let's see the actual amount of electrolytes that kind of water provides. First, with calcium. Well, that electrolyte water that a lot of people drink thinking they're getting electrolytes contains 0.5% of the calcium RDA. That's basically nothing. If you remember, in New York City, the calcium RDA of tap water is 2%, 4 times more than in an electrolyte water. That's not very good. Then for magnesium, you're getting 1.9% of your magnesium requirement for the day. Again, not so great. You're doing barely better than New York City tap water and much worse than the tap water in Indianapolis. And then when it comes to sodium and potassium, you're basically at 0%. That should really debunk a myth out there that electrolyte waters are a good source of electrolytes. And actually some brands do say that the electrolytes are added for tastes. Basically what they're really trying to say is you should really not buy that kind of water if you're looking for electrolytes for health reasons. Because the reality is they don't have a lot of electrolytes in them. So last but not least, I want to talk about the electrolyte or mineral content of a mineral water like San Pellegrino. Everybody has access to San Pellegrino around them, whether it's in a plastic bottle or a glass bottle. They're all over the place, whether it's in the US or Europe. Well, a mineral water like San Pellegrino contains 20% of the RDA of calcium in just 1 liter, and 14% of the RDA for magnesium in 1 liter of water. Those are huge sources, especially when you're recommended to drink 2 liters of fluid per day. Let's assume it's 2 liters of San Pellegrino. You're getting 40% of your calcium requirement and 28% of your magnesium requirement just by drinking San Pellegrino instead of drinking electrolyte waters. In terms of sodium and potassium, San Pellegrino provide negligible amounts of both, but again, that's to be expected because water is not supposed to provide those. Some waters do have sodium in them, but in general, people don't really have deficiencies in sodium. It's actually quite the opposite. Now, one last thing to touch on when we compare those waters, as we looked at their mineral content, is to look at price. Obviously, tap water is free, even though you do need a filter to make sure you're drinking safe tap water. Then electrolyte water is around 80 cents per liter, and mineral water like San Pellegrino is actually not more expensive than electrolyte water at about 80 cents per liter as well, except you're getting a lot more electrolytes or minerals in mineral water than in electrolyte water. And then depending on the city where you live, you could actually get a decent source of electrolytes from the tap water. So depending on your budget and what you're looking for, you might want to go with tap water or mineral water. But unless you really like the taste of electrolyte water, I don't see the point of buying that. You can just go with mineral water like San Pellegrino, or go directly with tap water and save money right there. And maybe if you're not convinced, I do want to touch on why is the mineral content of water really important? Because if you think about calcium or sodium, for example, people don't actually have deficiencies of calcium or sodium nowadays. So getting calcium and sodium in water isn't really particularly useful since we already get enough of those minerals in our diet. However, there is a chronic deficiency of magnesium in the US population. The Oregon State University measured the average intake of magnesium in the American population, and it actually stands at 72% of the RDA. In other words, the average American is missing 28% of their magnesium requirement for the day. And of course, some people are less healthy than others, so for some people they might be getting a lot less of that, and some people might be getting the appropriate amount. But the reason why this is very important is that magnesium plays a crucial role in weight loss and health in general. The reason why you're probably buying electrolyte water in the first place is for health, fitness, or weight loss reasons. And actually, if you're deficient in magnesium, adding magnesium to your diet is a great way for you to improve your weight loss goals as well as your fitness goals. And for that, I have two very interesting studies that prove that you should really care about make sure that you have enough magnesium intake throughout the day, whether it is throughout your diet or throughout your water consumption. So the first study is a meta-analysis of 27 randomized control trials. So really with a lot of sample size to get a lot of power in the conclusions that the researchers made from that study, where they looked at studies of randomized control trials where people supplemented with magnesium versus placebo. So in all of those studies, they divided groups of people into two groups where they would either get a magnesium supplement or a placebo. And then they observed the health outcomes from supplementing with magnesium or getting a placebo. And 6 of those studies specifically evaluated the impact of supplementing with magnesium with respect to insulin sensitivity. Insulin sensitivity is basically a measure of your ability to lose weight given how much you're eating. So it's a very important metric if you're trying to lose weight. You want to become more insulin sensitive, or in other words, less insulin resistant. That's a key to your weight loss success. So they looked at 6 studies with 443 participants, and what they noticed was that by supplementing with magnesium, the participants that had the magnesium supplements were significantly more insulin sensitive relative to placebo. Or in other words, those who had magnesium added to their diet became more insulin sensitive relative to those who did not have that additional magnesium. So it's critical for your weight loss program to make sure you get the appropriate amount of magnesium, and mineral water like San Pellegrino is a great source of that, like I mentioned, since you can basically get 28% of your magnesium requirement with just 2 liters of San Pellegrino per day. So really, the difference between electrolyte water and mineral water, with the fact that you get a lot more magnesium with mineral water, should be a really good reason for you to switch to mineral water instead of electrolyte water if you're trying to lose weight. Now there's a second study that's very interesting because people who typically buy electrolyte waters do it for fitness performance. And there I have awesome research that shows that if you're looking for better fitness performance from your water consumption, then you really want your water to have more magnesium. This study featured 18 professional cyclists that competed in a race for 3 weeks. And they split this group of 18 cyclists between 9 cyclists that received magnesium supplementation and 9 cyclists that received placebo. And what the researchers wanted to know was whether magnesium would have an impact on performance and specifically muscle recovery. And what they realized was that the group that supplemented with magnesium actually had a lower secretion of myoglobin than the group that did not supplement with magnesium. Now, what is myoglobin? It's a protein that's actually only found in the blood if there's muscle injury. So the fact that the people that supplemented with magnesium had less amount of myoglobin shows that there was less injury in the muscles of those that supplemented with magnesium than in the muscles of the cyclists that did not supplement with magnesium. So again, if you're looking for better performance at the gym, adding magnesium-rich foods or waters to your diet is a great way to improve your performance. So here again, instead of going for an electrolyte water that would have a negligible amount of magnesium, go for a magnesium-rich water like San Pellegrino or Gerolsteiner, which will provide you a lot more of that mineral that you actually need for better muscle recovery. Now, one last fun fact or interesting fact about this magnesium situation is something that has to do with where I'm from. I'm actually from France, and French people all drink mineral water at home. And they drink quite a large amount of that, probably 1.5 liters or even 2 liters per day. It's basically the standard to be drinking mineral water at home. And like I said, a lot of mineral waters contain a lot of magnesium. And a lot of people in general ask themselves, why are French people so thin? And although I think it's not the only reason, given how much magnesium makes you more insulin sensitive and gives you a better propensity to lose weight, I think it's pretty clear that that has something to do with the fact that French people drink mineral water instead of tap water or electrolyte water. Or for that matter, mineral water instead of any other type of fluid, which could include coffee or sugary drinks or things like that. And I think I'm really onto something there because I looked into medical research in France where they checked the intake of magnesium for the average French person, and it actually stands at 92% of the RDA, relative to 72% of the RDA in the US, like I said earlier. So French people have 20% more magnesium intake per day than Americans. And as I said earlier, if you have 2 liters of, let's say, San Pellegrino, you provide 28% of the magnesium to your body. So that difference could very well be explained just by the fact that French people drink mineral water when Americans may not. I hope all of this gave you a lot more information for you to make a better decision when you drink water, and that it will help you either save money by getting tap water that's filtered and free and provides you more electrolytes than electrolyte water, or by investing in mineral water, which is basically the same price as electrolytes with a lot more electrolytes. The goal of this channel is to give you very practical tips on how to lose weight, improve your health by looking at data and research and making sure that you are making the best decision for yourself. Alright guys, I'll see you next time.